Okay, in this first activity I'm going to have you do, I want you to learn how to use layers to gradually transition from a light to a dark area. I drew out a rectangle here that's 7 inches long, and I made a little mark at every inch going down it. Now I don't want that pencil line to show through, so I'm going to erase it. Use an eraser that doesn't damage the paper. I'm using a typical kneaded eraser. Now before you start painting, it's also good to have a piece of scrap watercolor paper that you can use to test your paint on. Do you need to add more paint? Do you need to add more water? This lets you know how light or how dark it's going to be as soon as you touch the paper. This should just be a useless scrap. Don't take a nice new piece of paper to do this. Just have something available for you to make some tests on. Now I'm going to start 1 inch down, and I'm going to paint the entire rest of the the rectangle with this purple paint. The first layer is pretty light. Again, with watercolor, you want to start light and gradually move darker and darker. I'm doing this with wet on dry, so I can create a pretty hard edge on that rectangle. Now I need to let it dry. I'll know it's dry when I look at it at an angle and I no longer see a shine. The first layer can dry pretty quick since the paper underneath it was dry. Okay. All right. So I've waited a little while. I don't see the shine anymore. I'm going to drop down 1 more inch and I'm going to put another layer on here. I'm painting the entire rectangle, and this will allow me to continuously make it darker and darker as I add more and more layers. Okay, I want to let that dry. This one will take a little bit longer since I painted on top of paper that was already wet. If you want, if you get impatient, you can use a blow dryer to speed things up. However, don't try to dry it too fast or it may cause the paper to warp and bend. Okay, I'm going to try painting the next layer on here. Still a little bit wet. So because it wasn't quite dry yet, you can see that my edge is starting to bleed out. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and add the next layer. I'm doing this a little bit faster than you should. Because again, my layers are not quite dry as I'm doing this. So the end result, what you're shooting for, is something along the lines of this, where you're transitioning from light to dark simply by adding one layer on top of another. That's the first activity. Thanks. See you in class.